The plea for help. The world was slowly falling apart. Humanity, once proud and powerful, was on the edge of extinction. It had been years since the alien invasion began, and Earth was losing the battle. Cities lay in ruins. The sky, once blue and full of life, was now darkened by the smoke of endless fires. The oceans, which had once sparkled under the sun, were now polluted, and their shores were filled with the wreckage of human civilization. People lived in constant fear, always looking over their shoulders, knowing that the next attack could be their last. The aliens had come from the stars, their ships big and cold, their weapons powerful and merciless. They had shown no mercy in their conquest, destroying cities, wiping out entire populations, and leaving nothing but chaos behind. No one had been able to stop them. The world's military forces had fought back with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. The aliens were too strong, their technology far beyond anything humanity could have imagined. Governments fell one by one, and the great nations of the world crumbled under the weight of the invasion. People were desperate, desperate for help, desperate for any kind of hope. But as the years went by, it seemed that all hope had been lost. The aliens were winning, and humanity was losing. In the darkest hour, as all seemed hopeless, a decision was made. The leaders of the remaining human governments, now scattered and desperate, gathered to make one final attempt to save their people. They would send a message to the stars, a message asking for help, for any force, any being who might be willing to lend a hand. The world's last surviving leaders gathered in a hidden bunker, surrounded by the ruins of cities long abandoned. The air was thick with tension as they debated. Some believed it was a waste of time. Sending out a message would only attract more enemies. But the others, those who had seen the desperation in the eyes of the people, knew that they had no other choice. If they didn't try, humanity would be wiped out forever. And so, the decision was made. They would send a signal into the void of space, a plea for help. The message was simple, yet filled with emotion. The people of Earth had no time for complicated words or grand speeches. All they could say was, "Help us. We are on the edge of losing everything. Will anyone hear our cry?" It was broadcast across all frequencies, in every language, and sent to the farthest reaches of space. The message was raw and honest. It spoke of fear, of loss, and of a world that was dying. The humans sent it out with the hope that someone, anyone, might hear it. The message echoed through the void, traveling across the stars, carrying humanity's desperate plea. The leaders of Earth waited, hearts heavy with uncertainty. They didn't know if anyone would respond. For all they knew, their message would be lost forever, drifting in the emptiness of space. For days, there was no response. The world held its breath. The silence was deafening. People continued to live in fear, knowing that their survival was uncertain. It was as if the universe had turned its back on them. But then, just when all hope seemed lost, something happened. A signal was received. It came out of nowhere, a burst of static and strange symbols that filled the airwaves. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Someone had heard humanity's plea. The leaders of Earth scrambled to decode the message, trying to understand its meaning. Was it an answer? Or was it something worse? Another enemy coming to finish what the aliens had started. The message was brief, almost cryptic. It simply read, "We hear you." At first, no one knew what to make of it. Who had sent the message? What did it mean? Was it a friend, or was it another alien force? The world watched, waiting for the next move. Would this be the help they had hoped for, or was this a cruel twist of fate? The silence that followed felt endless. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The days passed slowly, each one feeling like an eternity. No one knew what to expect, and yet everyone felt the same sense of hope growing inside them. Could this be the turning point? Could this be the answer to humanity's cry for help? The uncertainty was unbearable. People whispered to each other in the streets, gathering in small groups, talking in hushed tones. Some dared to believe that help was on the way, that someone or something out there was listening. Others were more skeptical, afraid to hope for something they could not see or understand. They had been let down before, and the thought of being disappointed again was too painful to bear. But despite the fear and doubt, there was something in the air, a feeling that the universe was about to change. Humanity had sent out its desperate plea, and someone had heard it. There was still a chance. As the days turned into weeks, the world waited, and in that silence, a new hope began to grow. For the first time in years, humanity dared to believe that they might not be alone in the universe after all. The first sign of hope. After what felt like an eternity of waiting in silence, the unexpected happened. It came in the form of a strange hum, faint at first, barely noticeable. The kind of sound that made people stop, turn their heads, and wonder if they had imagined it. But it wasn't their imagination. The hum grew louder, more distinct, until it filled the airwaves. It was unlike any signal humanity had ever received. It wasn't a broadcast. It wasn't a message. It was a sound that felt alien, distant, yet somehow comforting. For the first time since the invasion began, the world had a reason to pause, a reason to hope. The mysterious hum began to change. It started to form patterns, the static slowly giving way to a series of rhythmic pulses that resembled a language. An alien language, no doubt, but a language that, somehow, felt familiar. It wasn't just noise. It was something more. The sound held a strange sense of purpose, a sense of intent. Then came the breakthrough. A few hours after the hum began, an unexpected burst of energy transmitted across every frequency, every communication channel, all at once. It wasn't a message yet, but it was something different, something that the world had never heard before. The message, when it finally arrived, was simple yet powerful. It came as a quiet voice over the airwaves, clear and unmistakable. "We hear you." The words were soft at first, almost a whisper, as if the speaker knew how fragile the hope of Earth had become. Then they grew stronger, more assertive, resonating with an authority that sent a chill down the spines of everyone who listened. "We hear you," the voice repeated, a slight metallic undertone to its tone. "We have heard your call. Your plea for help has reached us across the stars." Humanity froze. The response they had longed for had finally arrived. But what did it mean? Was this the salvation they had prayed for, or was this just another trick, another false hope? The world's governments were quick to respond. Scientists scrambled to analyze the signal, looking for any sign of familiarity, any clue to its origin. The message was unmistakably alien, yet there was something about it that felt different from the cold, hostile tone of the invaders. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an offer of destruction. It was a simple acknowledgement. But even as hope began to rise in the hearts of the survivors, fear crept in. What if the voice on the other end wasn't truly a friend? What if it was a trap? The aliens had already shown their ruthless side. Could this new message be a form of deception? Could they be playing a new game, one that would end in disaster for Earth? The governments of the world began to prepare for every possibility. Some called for caution, advising the people to remain alert and ready for whatever might come next. Others urged unity, to see this as the sign of an ally reaching out to help. Meanwhile, across the planet, people could barely believe what they were hearing. For so long, they had fought in the shadows, believing that no one was out there to help them. And now, they were being told that someone, something, had heard their cry. It felt like a dream. The survivors began to share stories of the message in every corner of the world. Families gathered around their radios, holding their breath as they listened, trying to make sense of what was unfolding before their eyes. The first signs of hope were like sparks in the dark, small but significant. People began to look to the stars again, not with fear, but with curiosity. The endless void that had once felt so empty now seemed to have something more, something mysterious. Someone was out there, and they had heard. But who were they? What did this message mean? And most importantly, was Earth ready to accept whatever help was on its way? The world's fate now rested on the answer to these questions. As humanity waited for the next move, one thing became clear: something had changed. The impossible had happened. For the first time in years, the people of Earth felt the stirring of hope. The universe was no longer silent. The arrival, the waiting was unbearable. As the days turned into weeks, the entire world's eyes were turned skyward, watching, waiting, hoping. The message had been received, and the promise of help had been made. But what did it really mean? Was the mysterious voice that had reached them an ally or just another illusion? And then, without warning, the skies darkened. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't anything natural. No, this was something different, something from the heavens. The first sign that humanity's plea had been heard was the sudden appearance of a massive, shadowy object, slowly descending from the stars. It began as a speck in the sky, too small to see with the naked eye, but it grew larger with every passing moment. People across the world stood in awe, some in fear, some in wonder. The size of the object was unimaginable. It blotted out the sun as it loomed overhead, casting a shadow that stretched across entire cities. The first sighting of the alien ship struck terror in the hearts of many. Was this the end? Was this the full-scale invasion that humanity had been dreading? The world's military forces were on high alert, scrambling to position their remaining weapons, preparing for the worst. There was no time to debate whether the voice was a friend or a foe. The object was here, and it was approaching fast. On the ground, panic began to spread. People crowded the streets, looking up with wide eyes as the massive ship descended, its size incomprehensible. The ground vibrated beneath their feet as the ship touched down. It didn't land like a plane or fall from the sky like a meteor. Instead, it seemed to float, its sleek form hovering above the earth, as if defying the very laws of physics. The ship's surface gleamed darkly under the dimmed sunlight, its sharp edges and strange patterns giving it an otherworldly, almost menacing look. Yet there was something undeniably graceful about it, as if it belonged there, as if it had always been a part of the world in some unknown way. It wasn't clumsy or out of place. It seemed as though this ship had been designed specifically for this moment. The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved. No one spoke. The entire world seemed to hold its breath, staring up at the vessel, waiting for what would come next. The ship's doors opened with a smooth hiss, revealing a ramp that extended slowly to the ground. As it did, a figure appeared, tall, humanoid, but not quite human. The being wore a dark cloak that billowed around its form, and its features were obscured by a helmet-like mask, reflecting no light. It didn't move like the aliens who had attacked Earth. It wasn't a war machine, nor did it have the aggressive posture of the invaders. It moved with purpose, but with a sense of calm, as though it had no fear of the humans surrounding it. There was no sign of hostility, no weapons drawn. Instead, the figure simply stepped forward, a quiet, unspoken presence that seemed to command respect. The world's leaders and military officers were frozen in place, unsure of how to react. The alien ship that had arrived was like nothing they had ever seen. Even as they marveled at its beauty and mystery, they could not help but feel the weight of their uncertainty pressing down on them. Could this be the help they had been promised, or was it another test, another trick designed to put them in greater danger? As the figure descended the ramp, there was no immediate aggression, no sudden attack. Instead, it walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the center of the world's largest gathering, where leaders and military personnel were waiting. Every movement seemed measured, as if the being was not just making an entrance, but communicating something deeper, something unspoken. Then the being's voice came through the air, surprisingly calm and clear. "We have come to judge." The words hung in the air, heavy and mysterious. The phrase didn't sound threatening, but neither did it seem reassuring. It was a declaration, a statement of purpose that caused everyone who heard it to pause. "We have been watching," the voice continued. "And now, it is time for humanity to show its worth. Your survival will depend on your actions. Your plea for help has been heard, but what comes next is up to you." With these words, the world was thrown into confusion. What was this alien force asking for? A test, a challenge. The future of Earth suddenly felt uncertain. The arrival wasn't a simple act of kindness. It was a trial, a moment where humanity's worth would be weighed in the balance. And so, with the figure standing silently before them, the world stood at the edge of a precipice, wondering if they had the strength to rise to this new challenge. This wasn't a moment of immediate danger. No, this was something more, an opportunity. The question now was, would humanity take it? Would they rise to the occasion, or would they falter in the face of the unknown? The figure's presence held an ominous promise, and with it, a glimmer of hope. Humanity's fate was no longer in the hands of the invaders, but in their own. And for the first time in years, the people of Earth began to believe that they might have a fighting chance. A powerful revelation. The alien figure stood in silence, its imposing form bathed in the dim light from the ship, a stark contrast to the chaos and uncertainty that had gripped Earth. It had made its presence known, and now the entire world was waiting for the next move, the next word. Every eye, every camera, every mind was focused on this one moment. No one knew what the alien would say next, and the uncertainty was thick enough to feel. But then the alien spoke again, and this time, its words were not just a statement. They were a revelation. "We did not come to destroy you," the voice echoed, clear and unyielding. "We came to test you, to see if you are worthy of the future we offer. You have called out for help, but it is not enough to simply ask. You must prove your strength, your resolve. The true test begins now." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. A test. Humanity was not accustomed to being tested in this way. The survivors, the leaders, the military officials all exchanged nervous glances. What did this alien being mean? Why was this happening now, at the brink of Earth's destruction? The alien continued, its voice calm but filled with a depth that seemed to reverberate through the minds of everyone who listened. "You think your destruction is inevitable. You believe your species is fragile, that your strength is fleeting. But we have watched, and we have seen something different. In the face of the impossible, in the face of overwhelming odds, there is something in you, something hidden, something stronger than you know. That is why we have come, to see if you can find it." The alien's words resonated in the hearts of all who heard them. There was no denying it. Humanity had been on the verge of extinction, yet they had not given up. Even when the alien invaders ravaged the planet, humanity had continued to fight back, no matter how hopeless it seemed. The will to survive had kept them going, even when all the odds were stacked against them. "This is your challenge," the alien's voice boomed, its tone unyielding. "To find that strength within yourselves. To prove that humanity is worthy of surviving not only this trial, but any that may come. Your fate lies in your unity, your courage, and your resilience." The crowd below the ship stood frozen. The alien had just revealed something incredible. This wasn't just a test of military strength, or a challenge to fight back against invaders. No, this was a test of something deeper, something intrinsic to what it meant to be human. For the first time in years, the survivors of Earth felt a stirring of something unfamiliar. Hope. Real hope. Not the fleeting hope of waiting for a miracle, but the kind of hope that comes from within. The kind of hope that drives people to rise above the impossible, to unite in the face of darkness, to push through the barriers they thought they couldn't overcome. And then, the alien gave the final challenge. "You have 1 month. 1 month to prove your worth. You will face trials. Mental, physical, emotional. The challenges will test every part of your being. If you succeed, you will be granted the help you seek. If you fail, the choice will be yours. Will you face extinction, or will you rise above it? The world was stunned. A month. The aliens were not offering immediate rescue. They were offering something far more valuable, an opportunity to prove that humanity was not just a species to be saved, but a species capable of saving itself. But how? How could humanity rise to such a challenge? There were no instructions, no clear path forward. All they had was a time frame, a chance to dig deep within themselves and find the strength that the aliens claimed they had all along. The crowd's fear shifted to confusion. Some were scared to even begin the challenge. Could they pull together in the face of such an enormous test? Others were skeptical, unsure that humanity had the ability to rise up and overcome such seemingly insurmountable trials. But then, something remarkable began to happen. People began to talk. Quiet conversations turned into discussions, and those discussions sparked ideas. Individuals, families, communities, everyone started to feel it. A shift, a change. The aliens' words weren't just words. They were a mirror. Humanity's flaws, its mistakes, were exposed, but so too was its potential. Around the world, small acts of courage began to take root. Groups formed, alliances between nations that had once been divided. People, not just governments or armies, took the lead. The strength that the alien had spoken of began to show itself, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments of resolve. People volunteered to face the unknown. Scientists and engineers started devising ways to tackle the impending trials, and leaders who had once been fearful now stood with a renewed sense of purpose. It was clear now, this wasn't just a test from the alien beings. This was a test from the universe itself, a challenge to humanity's very soul. The world was standing at a crossroads, and the path forward would not be easy. But as the days passed, more and more people began to believe in themselves and in each other. They began to understand that this was not the end, but a beginning. For the first time in years, the people of Earth were united, not just in fear, but in hope. And that hope, small as it was, began to grow stronger with each passing day. It was the kind of hope that came from the depths of their hearts, from their belief that they could overcome, that they could rise. The test had begun, and humanity was ready to face it. Humanity's resilience. As the days passed, the entire world was transformed by the aliens' challenge. The weight of their words, the test of humanity's worth, hung heavily in the air. And yet, something within people began to shift. The world, once fractured and broken, began to rally together. It wasn't an immediate transformation. There were no sudden miracles. But there was something undeniable. A spark of unity, a sense of purpose that had long been lost. People from every corner of the earth, once divided by borders, beliefs, and conflicts, set aside their differences. Governments, once at odds, came together in an unprecedented show of solidarity. The human race was facing its greatest trial, and for the first time, it was not fighting against each other. It was fighting for something greater: survival. Across the planet, the response to the challenge began to take shape. Nations offered resources and expertise to one another. Scientists pooled their knowledge to devise ways to prepare for the alien trials. Medical teams gathered to study and create new solutions to potential challenges, while engineers worked tirelessly to build and improve systems to support humanity's most vulnerable. But it wasn't just the leaders and experts who stepped up. Ordinary people, too, began to rise to the occasion. Communities formed networks of support. Families shared their skills, their resources, their hope. The trials had not yet begun, but the groundwork for humanity's resilience was already being laid. In the midst of this wave of preparation, one voice rose above the rest. A simple man, a former teacher, took to the streets to speak to the people. He wasn't a soldier, nor a scientist, nor a government official. He was just a man with a dream of a united humanity that could face the impossible and emerge victorious. He stood in front of a crowd, his voice filled with passion. "We have survived countless trials before," he said, his eyes fierce with determination. From plagues to wars, from natural disasters to invasions, humanity has always found a way to keep going. We are survivors. And now, we will prove that we are more than what we've been made to believe. The aliens see our fear, but they do not understand our strength. Together, we can show them what humanity is truly capable of. His words resonated with everyone who heard them. People from every corner of the earth started to share their own stories. Stories of survival, of overcoming adversity, of fighting for what mattered most. These stories began to spread like wildfire, igniting a fire of hope in the hearts of those who had felt defeated for so long. Humanity's resilience was not just in its ability to fight back. It was in its ability to come together when it mattered most. It was in the strength of its people, the quiet courage of those who refused to give up, the determination of those who had nothing left but a will to survive. While the alien ship still hovered above the earth, watching, waiting, the people of the planet were no longer afraid. The fear that had once gripped them began to fade, replaced by something stronger: resolve. Humanity was no longer at the mercy of the unknown. They had taken control of their fate. In the weeks that followed, the world's greatest minds worked around the clock, creating solutions to the challenges the aliens had promised. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, but they only served to strengthen humanity's resolve. The trials ahead were still shrouded in mystery, but the people of Earth now understood that it was not the unknown that would define them, but their response to it. From the smallest villages to the grandest cities, people started to believe in the impossible. Soldiers trained with civilians. Artists created murals of unity. Musicians composed songs of hope. It wasn't just a physical fight that was coming. It was a battle for the heart of humanity itself. And the people of Earth were ready to face it, not as individuals, but as one united force. The aliens' challenge had lit a fire inside humanity, a fire that could not be extinguished by fear or doubt. It was a fire that burned brighter than any weapon or technology, a fire that came from the deepest part of their souls. As the days drew closer to the aliens' deadline, the world stood stronger, prouder, and more determined than it ever had before. The trials ahead would be difficult, perhaps even deadly, but humanity no longer saw them as obstacles. They saw them as opportunities to prove that they were not just survivors, but warriors of the heart. And in the quiet, determined faces of those preparing for what was to come, it became clear that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, its technology, or its grand plans. It was its spirit, the spirit that refused to surrender, the spirit that knew, deep down, that no matter how impossible the challenge seemed, they could rise. The aliens' test had begun, but humanity had already passed its first challenge, the challenge of hope. The final test, the day of reckoning, had arrived. Humanity stood at the edge of the unknown. The alien ship, now a looming presence in the sky, cast a long shadow over the earth, and the countdown to the final trial had begun. Every corner of the world had been preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of it felt heavier than ever. This was not just another battle or another challenge. It was the final test, the one that would determine whether humanity was truly worthy of survival, or whether they would fall into the oblivion that awaited them. The world's greatest minds and leaders gathered, their faces grave with determination and uncertainty. The aliens' message had been clear. This trial would test every facet of humanity, its intelligence, its unity, its strength, and its heart. It would push humanity to its limits, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and weaknesses. And if they failed, there would be no second chance. A vast arena had been set up in the heart of the world's largest desert, an open, empty space that stretched as far as the eye could see. There, under the watchful eye of the alien ship, humanity would face its trial. The survivors, those who had shown courage and resolve in the face of invasion, now stood on the edge of the greatest test of all. The alien figure, the one who had delivered the challenge, appeared again, its presence commanding and cold. Its voice, amplified through the air, reverberated across the land. You have come this far. Now, the final test begins. For a moment, there was only silence. The tension was unbearable. Everyone, from the highest generals to the youngest child, waited for the next words to come. And then the test was revealed. The trial would consist of 3 separate challenges, each one designed to test humanity's resilience in different ways. Each challenge would grow progressively harder, pushing humanity to its limits. The rules were simple. Fail any of the 3 trials, and Earth would be left to its fate. Succeed, and the help promised by the aliens would be granted. The first challenge was deceptively simple: survival. Humanity would be thrust into an environment that mirrored the conditions that Earth had endured since the invasion. A landscape of desolation, stripped of all resources, no technology, no weapons, only their wits and resourcefulness. They would have to endure the harshest elements, find food and shelter, and survive for 3 days with nothing but their strength and willpower. But as the challenge began, it became clear that this trial was not just about physical survival. It was about something deeper, something more profound. The survivors were not just fighting against the elements, they were fighting against their own despair. The world had been shattered by war, famine, and death. Could humanity rise from the ashes? Could they find hope in a world that had offered so little? As the survivors struggled, some began to falter. The harsh environment pushed them to their breaking points. Fear crept in. Doubt crept in. There were moments when it seemed like all was lost, but it was in those moments of despair that the true strength of humanity began to shine through. People came together. The survivors shared what little they had: food, water, warmth. They worked together, using their collective knowledge and creativity to build shelter, to hunt, to find the strength to keep going. The strength of unity, the resilience of spirit, became clear. They were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting for each other. And after 3 long days, the challenge ended. They had survived. They had endured. But that was only the first trial. The second challenge was even more demanding: trust. Humanity's greatest weakness had always been its divisions. History had been marked by war, by betrayal, by distrust between nations, races, and individuals. Now the aliens' test would force humanity to confront this flaw. The survivors were placed in a situation where they had to rely on others, people from different cultures, languages, and backgrounds. They were given a task, one that required complete trust in one another. It could be anything: building something together, sharing resources, or solving a complex problem. The catch was that they couldn't do it alone. The trial was meant to test their ability to set aside differences, to work together despite the challenges that came with it. The survivors had to trust one another with their lives, with their future. For many, this was the hardest challenge of all. Years of war and division had left deep scars, and some still carried the weight of those scars in their hearts. But something remarkable happened. Slowly, but surely, the walls of distrust began to crumble. People started to understand that the world they had known, where nations and individuals fought for dominance, was no longer an option. In order to survive, they needed each other. They needed to build bridges, not walls. The second trial ended when the survivors, once divided, completed the task. They had found trust in one another, and in doing so, they had learned something powerful. Unity was the key to overcoming anything. Finally, the third challenge: sacrifice. This was the most difficult of all. The survivors were forced to make a choice that would test their commitment to the greater good. They were presented with a scenario where they had to choose between saving themselves or saving others. It was a decision that would force them to confront their own desires and selfishness, asking whether they were willing to sacrifice their own survival for the sake of others. At first, many hesitated. The temptation to save oneself was strong. But as the challenge progressed, something unexpected happened. The survivors, each one, began to realize that their strength lay not in their own survival, but in their willingness to give for others. Each person faced a moment of choice. Would they save themselves, or would they make the ultimate sacrifice to save the lives of others? It was in these moments that humanity showed its true strength. They chose to sacrifice for each other. And in doing so, they proved that their greatest power was not in their survival, but in their ability to love and protect one another. When the third trial ended, the alien figure reappeared, its gaze fixed on the survivors. "You have passed the test," it said, its voice filled with both solemnity and respect. "You have proven that humanity is not just a species of survival. You are a species of strength, of unity, and of selflessness. You have shown that you are worthy of the help you seek." The alien ship, once a cold and intimidating presence, now began to glow with a soft, warm light. The final test was over, and humanity had passed it. They had faced their darkest fears and emerged stronger than they had ever been. The universe, it seemed, was not through with humanity after all. The alien had come to judge, but what it had found was a species ready to rise, to unite, and to change the future. The unexpected victory. The final trial was over. The survivors stood together, their hearts pounding in their chests, their minds still reeling from the immense challenge they had just faced. The alien ship, which had once seemed like an instrument of judgment, now shimmered with a soft, ethereal glow. It was no longer an intimidating, cold presence. It felt almost welcoming. For a moment, everything was still. The survivors, from every corner of the earth, stood united in the vast desert, eyes fixed on the figure before them. The alien had promised them help, if they succeeded. But now, standing on the edge of victory, humanity couldn't help but wonder, what would this help truly look like? Would it be technology, weapons, or something else entirely? The alien figure stepped forward, its mask still concealing its features, but the tone of its voice was different now, calm, respectful, almost reverent. "You have done what no other species in the galaxy has ever done," the alien said, its words carrying the weight of centuries of observation. "You have faced destruction, adversity, and doubt. You have conquered your darkest fears, not with weapons, but with your spirit. You have proved yourselves worthy not just to survive, but to thrive." The survivors were silent. They had expected to hear words of victory, perhaps an offer of alliance or assistance. But these words spoke to something deeper, something profound. They were not being celebrated just for surviving. They were being celebrated for something more, their potential to evolve, to grow, to be more than the sum of their parts. "We came to test you," the alien continued, "but we did not come to give you the answers. We came to show you that the power to shape your future is already inside you. What you have achieved here today is not just a victory over us, it is a victory over yourselves." A hushed murmur spread through the gathered survivors. They had believed their survival was a fight against the alien invaders, a battle for the future of Earth. But now they understood. The true victory had been in overcoming their own limitations, their own fears, their own doubts. It was a victory that transcended the external threat. It was a triumph of humanity itself. The alien raised a hand, and a light, almost like a beam of energy, cascaded down from the ship. It illuminated the survivors, bathing them in a warm golden glow. This was not the harsh, destructive light of invasion. It was a light that felt like a promise, a blessing. "We did not come to give you technology or weapons," the alien's voice echoed, "for you do not need them. You have proven that your strength lies not in machines or tools, but in your ability to adapt, to unite, and to sacrifice for one another. What we offer is something far greater." The survivors watched in awe as the light spread, and before them, a massive holographic display appeared, showing images of distant galaxies, strange new worlds, and countless civilizations. And then, the alien's message became clear. "We offer you knowledge, the knowledge of the universe, the wisdom of countless races who have faced similar trials. You are not alone. You are now part of something much greater, a community of species that have overcome their own darkness. You will be guided, not by force, but by understanding. Your journey has just begun, and the universe will be your teacher. The world was silent for a long moment, processing the enormity of what had just been revealed. This was not just help in the form of resources or military might. This was something far more powerful, the opportunity to join a galactic community, to learn and grow, to evolve into something far greater than the divided, war-torn world they had been. Humanity had been given the keys to the universe itself, not as conquerors, but as students. The alien race, once seen as a potential enemy, had become humanity's guide, showing them that their greatest strength lay not in what they could destroy, but in what they could create. As the alien ship slowly ascended into the sky, its final words echoed across the planet. Your victory is only the beginning. The universe is vast, and there are countless challenges ahead. But with the strength you have shown, you will rise to meet them. We will watch, and we will help when needed. But it is you who will shape the future. The ship vanished into the stars, leaving behind a changed world. The survivors stood in the quiet aftermath, their hearts swelling with pride. They had done the impossible. They had passed the test. But more importantly, they had discovered something about themselves, a strength, a unity, and a potential they had never imagined. And as humanity looked to the stars, they no longer saw an empty void of fear. They saw possibilities. The universe was no longer a place of cold uncertainty. It was a place of opportunity. And humanity, now united, stronger, and more resilient than ever, was ready to meet it. The unexpected victory wasn't just about surviving. It was about learning to believe in themselves again. And with that belief, the world would change. Forever.